I'd like to thank first Rabbi Gottesman for inviting me to give the introduction, preparation for the YYK. My father is here, so the attends the YYK every year, so I get to see firsthand the impact that it has on people. So I want to go through the Indian of Yordlumnus Chavera, which deals with competition and halacha. Very common, as we heard before, that there's a store that's in a mall. There's more negayas so in small towns, but in a big town also. And all of a sudden, in the vicinity, a guy's a small grocery. Next thing he knows, one of the big super stores is opening up next to him. And the person's nervous, he's going to lose all his customers. He's not going to have any more parnasa. And the shaila is, what's halachically, does someone have a right to open up a store where it's going to negatively impact someone who's already existing who has a store? Also would like to deal with the question, going to Hashem. Very common over there, you wait for a bus, and these tenders come, they pull up, they pull the coppers, they go along the route of the bus stop, and they pick up passengers. People sometimes find it's more convenient for them, depends who you're sitting next to, if you're stuck in there, but it's more on time. And the question is, are you allowed to run such a business? And even if you're not allowed to run a business, once they're already doing it, are you allowed to go with it? And the other question would be, if you're passing by, you're on your way to Lakewood from New York, you're passing by the Lakewood, you know where the Lakewood bus stop is, you're passing by, you have an empty car, can you just pull over, take some people into your car? What that's called, you're taking away parnasa from someone that's sitting and about to go onto the bus. Is that permissible or not? So before we go into the proper halachas of these cases and what's called competition, I want to give two agdamas from the Chazon Ish. First agdama deals with, and this is something that's very common. I remember I was once sitting in a bungalow colony, and there was one grocery over there, and then a mall opened up in the vicinity. And there's a whole vikuach going on. People were saying it's not fair to take away business, and they're going to force this person out of business, and he's there for so many years. And other person were countering, no, we need it. It's a bigger store. The guy's not producing right. And there were 10 people who were sitting around. Everyone had this day. It's right. It's wrong. It's right. It's wrong. And this is an area of Choshen Mishpat, which is different than Orach Chaim. Very rarely do you find when a person has a shayla and bayr that you have two people fighting. It's right, wrong. It's not an emotional issue. When it comes to a lot of inyanei Choshen Mishpat, it's a very emotional. People think that they know what's right and what's wrong. How can a person do it? There's a moral compass that they feel that should guide as to whether or not it's right or wrong. Zok the Chazon Ish that there's no such thing. Zok the Chazon Ish that chayvus hamusrius means the way a person thinks is guf echad and piskei halacha. They're really connected to the halacha. The halacha hu machras es a oser es a mutar al teres hamusr. If you want to know what something is right or wrong, it's not nikva of pimusr, what you think hashkafically is right or wrong. It's nikva yedei halacha. And he gives an example. He discusses a case where there's a town, and there's a rebbe who's there. He's there for a bunch of years. All of a sudden, some young whippersnapper comes in, and he has all the new techniques that he's going to use to teach the Talmidim. And he says, Kedarkam, people are never satisfied with the old. They always want to try something new. And all the Talmidim start shifting over to the new Rebbe in town. Is that right or wrong? The old Rebbe, the Malamed there for all the years. Now this young guy is coming in, taking away all his Talmidim. Zok the Chazon Ish that it's totally, and whether or not, as we learned the Gemara today, there's a halacha that even in cases where you're not allowed to compete, but there's an exception from Malamde Tinoikis that there's no issa possible for you say. So Dr. Chazon Ish, if there's the exception that they would have made in the Takana was that there's an exception from Malamde Tinoikis, then the guy did nothing wrong. There's a lot of there. So all the people who are screaming and trying that he's wrong, Avla that he's doing, they're the ones who are in the wrong. Mashenkin, if the halacha would be that you're not allowed to compete in such a way, whoever spoke bad about the person who came in second would have been right. So you can speak lashon hara about them, obviously within the parameters. So Dr. Chazon Ish, the first murdik you said that right and wrong is not nikva basi your feelings. Right and wrong, it's nikva basi what's straight in Shulchan Aruch, because that is the essence what's right and wrong. People get emotional. It's fair. It's not fair. You could compete. You can't compete. The only guiding thing is not what you feel is right and wrong. It's what is straight in Shulchan Aruch, what's really right and wrong. Now, I don't think the Chazon Ish is coming to tell you, Yesod, that you have to always go ahead and to fight with another person just because he's going ahead and competing with you. The Chazon Ish, first give the second akdama. The Chazon Ish also has another part that the Chazon Ish asks that what's all this halacha that you're not allowed to compete, you are allowed to compete? We know so what's wrong? A person opens up a store, someone else wants to open up a competition. The person can negatively impact your business. Your mezainis is Ketzum Rosh Hashanah. So how does this get affected? You also know that the Gemara in Yuma says, you can't take away something from someone else. So Chaznish tells another very important aside that this is a chiyuv shtadlus. The uman that the cases where you're what's in me'akav sagt outside chiyuv shtadlus. The etzem is a noise of a Ketzum Rosh Hashanah, but it's a chiyuv shtadlus to go ahead and to stop it. So I don't think when people learn up from this Chazanish that it means a chiyuv shtadlus. Anytime someone's taking away parnasa from you, you have a chiyuv to go ahead to go to Bezdin to try to stop him. It's true. The Chazanish is saying that there's an inyan if someone's competing with you that there is a chiyuv shtadlus to try to maintain what's halachically belonging to you. But he's not really saying that someone has a chiyuv to fight with someone else to get what's his. As a mavur in the Chofetz Chaim in Shara Tzvuna says that if someone is beteach b'Kadosh Baruch Hu and he doesn't want to fight with a chaver who's taking away something which rightfully belongs to him, because he's nervous that he's going to get the cast and he's going to negatively fight with him, says the other person's doing the right thing, and he gives a mashal. He says that a father is giving out portions to his kids, and one kid grabs away a portion from another child. So the person has two options. He just grabbed away a portion which belongs to me. So he fights and grabs it back. Or he could go to his father and tell him, Tati, he took it away from me. Could you give me a different portion? The father, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is going to be sameach. The father's happy. He doesn't want his kids fighting. Zog the Chofetz Chaim that if a person, she's akav v'loy rotza, a person's fighting with his chaver and the person's trying to take it away from him, and he comes in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he doesn't want to fight with his chaver. Zog the Chofetz Chaim, and the Eibush is going to give him shefa because of that. So again, we have on one hand, it is a chiyuv shtadlus, there is a concept that you could stop someone from working. On the other hand, about that is the Indian of being mevater. Someone told me a story this week in some out-of-town community where he had a Shiurim store, and he wasn't really making it. And the next thing he knows that someone's opening up a competition to him. Here he is, he's the only store in town, he's not making it. The other guy's coming, he's for sure doomed. He's going to have to go out of business. Maisa decided to be mevater, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu helped for some reason after the other store opened, either brought traffic, people became aware that there's Shiurim stores. The Ma'aser's business went on. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu has enough shefa to give to everyone. Now let's start with go to the sugya, the concept of Yordlum's chavera. Let's go to the case where you start the general thing. You want to open up like you mentioned before, there's a pizza shop in a mall, and someone wants to go ahead and open up another pizza shop in the same mall. So you're allowed to go ahead, bevada, you're going to take away customers. People are going to go, there's two stores over there. When there's one store, everyone came to you. Now all of a sudden there's a second store. People are going to come to you to the second store. Is the person doing anything wrong by opening up such a store? That's a machlokes in the Gemara. Gemara says, Amar Rav Huna, Hai bar mavoi, duki rechaya. Someone has a mill, the also bar mavoi chavrei, kamuki gabe, and he opens up one right next to him. So Rav Huna says, Dina hodu ma'akav elayu, the amalei kaposik lechayusik. You have a right to stop someone from opening up a competition because you can have a time like you're taking away my chiyas. I already had this business. I was existing. I was living off this business, and now here you come all of a sudden and take away my business. I have a right to go ahead and to stop you. The Gemara later brings Amar Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua. The Gemara is mavur that he argues on this. There's machlokes Rav Huna and Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua whether or not someone has a right to go ahead and to stop someone from competing with him, where he's going to take away his customers. Amaisa kol haposkim paskin like Rav Huna b'Rei Yeshua for the mechaber and kufnan vov. So if someone has a merchatz, a chanus, a rechayim, bocha ve'rev, also merchatz acheres kenegdai, someone opens up one keneged him, eina yochel lemnoya v'loy melat pasuk chayim. You have no taina that you're taking away my parnasa. The same way you have in Rashi like this, the same way you have a right to open up in your rishus a store, I also have a right. Just because you were there first does not give you a right to stop me from opening it. The same way you have a right. We have equal rights. We both live in the same town. When someone lives from out of town, we'll see that it has a set of different halachas. But we both live in the same town. We have equal rights to open up a store. Just because you were there first does not give you a right to go ahead and to stop me from opening up. So this is a double poshet, the way we paskin. that if someone has a pizza shop and someone else wants to open, the person has a right to go ahead, and Ikka the Dina has a right to open up, and there's nothing wrong with him opening. Not nothing wrong. We'll see that maybe it's a midas chasidus, but the person has a right to go ahead and to open up. Now, just because he has a right halachically passing in front of Yeshua, does that mean that it's the right thing to do? So here's a Mendy Gemara in Makkas Daf Kaf Daled. The Gemara says there were taryag. We know there's taryag mitzvahs. The Gemara goes through that David was a midam HaRav came down with different madrigas to saying which mitzvahs he should do. And one of the mitzvahs that it says over there is lo yasel is Yordalomnos Chavero. Lo yasel l're'eyu ra. Shouldn't do something bad to your chaver. You shouldn't you shouldn't take away from the umnus, from the parnasa of your chaver. There's a machlokes in the Rishonim how to understand this Gemara. The Sefer Ikrim learns that what the Gemara is the David midam nachadasa, then afterwards came Michal, Yishaya, the different mitzvahs that there were not really telling avek that these mitzvahs, they weren't really discussing mitzvahs. Really was discussing was shiroshim of how a person should be noyek. A person should loyer lives chavera, it's a midah to take away something from someone. So the Sefer Ikrim learns that we weren't discussing mitzvahs, they were discussing different shroshim. There was over here, it says, a person shouldn't have in machshava, there's the Indian of machshava, maisa, you shouldn't take away from something, it's a midah maguna, it's a midah raw to take away something from someone. But in Sefer Ikrim, it's mashman, he says clearly that it's not one of the mitzvahs. When it says, even though it says, it says in midah on 11, this is not considered really a mitzvah, which is Ikrim and Atayra. The Joshua Haran says, Faket. The Joshua Haran says, he explains what does it mean it was a midah on different numbers of mitzvahs. He says like this: Allah Kavano, that Moshe, David, Yishai, Micha, Chavakot, those are the Adamah that had different amount of mitzvahs, were each trying to be manig their door, kafi, what they saw in front of them. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw, you have to give all taryag mitzvahs. If you megala to say this, of which mitzvahs are more choshev than the other, then people are going to gravitate to do only those mitzvahs, and they won't do all the mitzvahs. So Moshe Rabbeinu did give out which are the yisodos and the shiroshim of the Mekayim Kol HaTorah Kula. Because you should do all taryag mitzvahs and you could reach b'shleimus. You're going to strive for it and you'll be able to reach b'shleimus. David HaMelech saw there was a shvachkeit. It was a rifyan already by the time of David HaMelech. There was a rifyan. So David HaMelech saw that there's a tayelis to be megala which mitzvahs are the ones that you should focus on and which ones have more schar today to reach the shleimus. So the Joshua Haran says that these are mitzvahs min HaTorah. And what does it mean? Midam al-Achadasa, Midam 11, because he was megala to a person they should focus on this. So Joshua Haran's mavur that this is a sherish min HaTorah, there's a mitzvah min HaTorah. So if someone violates the isser of Yordalomnos Chavero, he was able to isser min HaTorah. The Shulchan HaRav in Siman Vav and Vini Hefke Vasagas Gvul paskin that this Indian of Shlo Yordalomnos Chavero is a midas chasidus not to compete. Though he paskins still like a wunderbraid of Yeshua. That one is allowed to compete with someone else, still zok that is a midas chasidus not to compete. It says a midas chasidus shel Yordalomnos Chavero shenemar v'eshes re'elo timnei, which is a Gemara in Sanhedrin. He also brings the pasuk in the Gemara in Makkas, which we just mentioned. Lo yasel re'eyu ra, he shouldn't do something bad. Pirish chacham shel Yerid l'Yordalomnos Chavero. HaRav is mavur that the Gemara in Makkas, is learning that Gemara, and the Tziyunim, which comes from his brother who gave those makaras. The Gemara Makkas. He's learned that Gemara is a midas chasidus not to be Yordalomnos Chavero.
But midirei Kabbalah, so it's chamor.
What?
It's a midas chasidus midirei Kabbalah.
Right.
So
It's
chamor.
It's chamor. It's about the midas chasidus not. The Pesach Choshen tells us, what does it mean? There's a midas chasidus that a person shouldn't open up. So you have one store in town. It means no one else can open up. You have one pizza shop in Lakewood. Now there's probably 100. I don't know how many. One guy opened up first. It's reaching so many people. It's a midas chasidus not to compete. He says about that you can't say that. He means that, and it's very hard to be magder even within the midas chasidus as to how close it has to be, how much competition you're taking away. He says to open up mamish right next to him where it's clearly going to take away, that you can't do. But even if you go to the Shulchan HaRav, there's a midas chasidus, you can't say that it can't open up at all. Now even this that Shulchan HaRav says a midas chasidus, Chassam Sofer and a tshuva argues on this. First he brings a tshuva to Chavis Yor. There's a tshuva to Chavis Yor that says the mutar l'chatchila. It's mutar l'chatchila for someone to compete with someone else. If it's not someone from someone who lived also in this town, there's nothing wrong with competing. And he brings a raya. Has to be that it's mutar l'chatchila. Why? Because he brings the Gemara in Makkas, and the Gemara in Makkas is only minor things that are midas chasidus. He says the Chaviro says that there's no Nidna Avera in these 11 things, and one of them is the concept of Yordlebus Chavera. The Chacham Sofer goes ahead and argues on this. He says about these things are Ikrim, and it could be that they're arguing the Machloikas has to do with the Sefer Ikrim versus Rosh Hashanah, how to learn the Gemara. But the bottom line is the Chacham Sofer argues on the Chaviro, and he says Avada there is a sherish, but the Gemara is saying that Shlo Yordlebus Chavera has a sherish in a mitzvah min HaTorah. We pass like a hundred to be sure that person's allowed to compete. Zok the Chacham Sofer, what's it talking about? It's talking about like we saw from the Ramah. That you're not allowed to be posik use of the gamri. So he introduces and said, what does the Gemara Makkah say? The Gemara Makkah is saying, although we pass like a hundred to be sure that you're allowed to put a rechayim next to someone else's rechayim, and there's no issa to go ahead and to compete. 1 second. There are areas where you're not allowed to compete, and the example that the Chacham Sofer gives is posik use of the gamri, where by you opening, you're going to take away the person's parnasa. And we'll see a machloikas in Ramosh and Chacham Sofer had to be magda what it means posuk l'chayus l'gamri. But there's a concept of posuk l'chayus l'gamri. We take away all everything from him, and there it's also. And that's the way he learns the Gemara Makas. And it's Mavur and Chacham Sofer. He doesn't hold any as midas chasidus. There's no makor from any midas chasidus. He learns that the Gemara is referring to cases where it's osir al pidin, and those cases, the example that he gives where it's osir al pidin is a case of posuk l'chayus l'gamri. So we'll get to that. Give me a second and we'll get there. So really, I want to concentrate on the 5 different areas we find in halacha you're not allowed to go ahead and compete. One of them, and 4 of them have a shirish in the Gemara, which we saw today, of Shani Dogam Diyav Siyara. The first case, as we mentioned, that if a person knocks out the competition completely, person opens up a store next to someone else's store, and by him opening up, he's going to cause the other person to go out of business completely. There's a small little grocery. Right next door, a huge grocery is going to go ahead and open up. They can take away all the competition. He's going to have cheaper prices. There's a bigger volume. He opened up a massive store. The other person can't.
All those tanoim have to be in place. Cheaper prices, master.
We'll get to the thing. That's an area, at least, will be a question of possible use of the gam. See that this concept of possible use of the gam is not a dov muskim in the place either. The second area which we'll deal with is where someone's already online. Some Sefer gives a case where a person's already online in the store. And the person goes and tries to schlep him out of that store. The person's already nitzad, he's already captured, he's already shaykh to the first person. We'll see that there's a machloikas, but we'll see that there's a strong mokum in halacha to say that would be also to go ahead and to compete by taking him out of the store. The third area we'll deal with is Geboiten Rabbeinu Meir, Avash Rabbeinu Tam, which is that if you're using what that person created, Rabbeinu Meir discusses where I put down fish, and the fish came to that area because I baited it. And now next person comes and puts a net next to there. So you're using what that person created for your own advantage. I remember someone once asked me, he had a case like this. There was a cash for gold business. And the person advertised on the radio and he advertised on television. They had put it all over, cash for gold on this and this street. But some chacham decided, he's advertised for this and this street, with cash for gold. 2 stores down, he rented a storefront and opened cash for gold. Everyone sees this guy spent millions of dollars advertising on the radio and that. Give all the cash for gold, and they were killing each other. So we'll see that there's a mokum that api halacha will be yasser. Another case, someone used someone else's. Someone branded his electronics, and he worked hard, and he had a good product, and he branded his product, and he got a lot of traffic on via Google because people looked for this particular product. Some other chacham came, and he took that person's name and he misspelled it. So when you misspell it and you put it on your site, so the traffic automatically gets, when the person's looking for that product, it gets routed to your site. He had a similar product that he was going to get the person to sell. This also would be the same type of questions. That person branded something, that's already, and here you're going ahead and using his brand name to get the traffic to you.
That crossed the line into Gzela, no?
No, because he misspelled it. He didn't Gzela. The person was looking for this product, and he misspelled it. He's not telling you he's yelling at his product.
On purpose.
He on purpose got the traffic to come to him. Right. What he did is he got the traffic to come to him. I understand. This guy brought the fish to here, and on purpose you put a net to grab the fish that you wanted to come to you.
Same thing.
Not partial, whatever. Okay, let's go. Another thing is, which is known as the sugi of marufia.
The worst, no?
Yarav kamata l'khi, which is the way the Chaviro says. We have a steady customer. Person went and he's always buying by this particular person. And now you go, oh, by the way, you pressure him, come buy by me. So you're undoing something which is a steady custom, which is known as marufia, which comes from either the Lashon Yarav Kamata L'chi, or it's an Arabic word, but there's a sugi of marufia, which also has a sherish in the same Gemara.
and then there's competing with something out of town. So these are the 5 areas which are sveikis in halacha, where even if you pass like a funda breda v'shua that you're allowed to compete, maybe there's a mokum to say that you're not allowed to compete. Those are 4. And the last one was out of town company. Someone from out of town coming to compete in your town. So let's see. All the first 4 have a shirish in the Gemara, which one line of the Gemara, and this is the shirish of all these 4 halachas. So Rav Huna brings, we mentioned before, Rav Huna says that if a person wants to open up a chayim next to another chayim, so the halachas Rav Huna says, "Dina the ma'akev elayah, the kapasik lechiyusim." You're taking away my chiyus. One wants to bring a raya to Rav Huna. Leima mesayayla. Machikim etzudas hadog min hadog, kemaloi ritzas hadog. If someone has a net spread out and you want to go ahead and put another net in the vicinity, so you have to separate it. The kama, Rav Huna at parsa. So you see from there that you're not allowed to put a net close to where the other person is. So he wants to bring a raya that he can have a tiny capacity to use. Zok the Gemara no. Shani dogem the yosiyar. So here there's 4 pshatim in the Rishonim. There's more than 4, but we'll go consider 4 pshatim in the Rishonim, and each one is an afkamina la'alocha that comes out from how you understand the teretz of the Gemara. Shani dogem the yosiyar. So Rashi learns like this: Shehikir zechurah. He knew there was a fish, and he knew the spot of the fish where they came out of that hole. V'nosam is enoisa v'tech v'lo ritzasei. You baited the fish to come out of this hole. Betuach sheyilkadenu. You're betuach that you're going to catch it because you know exactly where to trap him. Since you know exactly, and you went after this fish, and it was betuach that you were going to get this fish because you went to his hideout, you went to his place, and you took it away from him, so you betuach it was going to come to you. So Shani Dogam the Yov Siyara, according to what Rashi is saying, is that you can't interfere, even if you pass from the Breda Vishua, that you're allowed to compete in Yordalot next to another person's Rechayim, but you can't, if the person's already betuach that it's coming to him, he knows for sure it's coming to him, then you can't interfere anymore. That's Rashi. The Ramban argues in Rashi, and he says, no, it has to be that it was already in the net, and you put the bait and you got it to come out of the net. He calls it a lotion of gezel, which some Sofer says is not mamish the issue of gezel, because he says that it wouldn't be a chiddush in competing. It doesn't mean mamish gezel. Sofer learns that you baited it to come out of the net and then you captured it, so it already became hefker anymore. But the bottom line is that the Ramban holds it has to be mamish in the net, and once it's in the net and you try to draw it out of the net, that's when it's the Shani Dog and the Yov Siyara. Rabbeinu Meir, Avish Rabbeinu Tam, is Tais and Kedushin Dafnan Tes, says that what's Shani Dog and the Yov Siyara means, like I mentioned before, that you baited it, you put down the fish. The reason why the fish are in this vicinity is because you baited the area, and the fish all came to eat from the small fish that you put down. So you created a situation where the fish are in this area. Now the other guy swoops in and puts his net next to it, so you're using your work. That's Rabbeinu Meir. Shani Yov Siyara, you bet him allowed to compete. When you're not allowed to compete, when it's similar where the person already baited the area, then you can't go ahead and take it away. The Rimagash, this is the 4th pshat we'll deal with, says it's an interesting Metzias. I don't know, maybe someone here knows the way fish work, but he says, I think Metzias like this: Koloimar, the shalchen shluchen liris im yesha metzudas. The way fish work, the schools of fish work, is that they scout out the area to see if there's any nets in lav. Ukisharoya metzuda rishayna, when the school of fish scout out the area, I guess those ones that get trapped, yedim sheyesha metzuda, they see that the first school of fish gets trapped. They know that there's a trap there. Uborchem oisamakim kuloi. They disappear from that area. They nichnasen of klal nimtza oisa metzudim afsekas lechayus legamer. So Rimagash says that what's the problem with Shani Dog and the Yov Siyara? Because since the first school of fish is going to get caught, I mean, presumably get caught by your net before it goes to the net that the other guy put down first. And once the first group of fish get caught, all the other fish disappear. And it comes out that there's the second guy's business, the second guy's net that he placed out won't catch any more fish. And this is the makar of Pasuk L'Chayus L'Gamri. We have the first introduction of this concept. Pasuk L'Chayus L'Gamri is the Mishrash in the Gemara. You ask where the makar was. So it could be Shani Dogam the Yov Siyara. It says that it's Pasuk L'Chayus L'Gamri because when the other guy puts his net there first, it's going to take away the existing net that was there before. Is going to end up with no fish, and you're going to end up with all the fish, and he's going to end up with no fish, and that's also a pe'alach. Although you could compete where you're both going to get fish, if you're going to cause the person who was there before not to end up with any fish, then you're not allowed to go ahead and do it. So we have 4 pshatim. We have the Rimagashas, that the scouts that came out, and they're going to get caught. Only the first group of fish are going to get to the first person, the second person went with nothing. And that's possibly used to the Gamri. You have Rabbeinu Meir, Rabbeinu Tam, that learns that you're using the bait which the other person put. You have Shitas Rashi, that he was betuach that's going to come to him. And the Ramban says that you're actually taking it out of the person's net. Let's work this in halacha. So let's go with the most famous shita of which I heard you mentioned in the shir before, which is the shita of the Avi Yosef. So Beis Yosef brings the shita of the Avi Yosef. He says, Kosav Mordechai, you have a mavi, which was enclosed for 3 different ways, and there was only an opening in one side. Reuven lived deep into this cul-de-sac, and there was a mavi sosim megimel tzadim, and he lived deep in there, and he had a rechai in there. So a person goes, and instead of opening at the end, he opens up at the beginning. The look to Avi Yosef, they could stop him from opening. It can happen because presumably the people who, I guess it has to be, he was asking before that, if you have a pizza shop, why wouldn't they go to the other person? Today we're Bali Taiva, this fish, that fish. I guess a rechaim is not something that makes such a big difference. And so the person who comes in, he has no incentive to go to the back of the movie. He had the store open in the front. So everyone's going to stop in the beginning of the movie and they'll go to that person and they won't end up going into the movie to go to the other person. So it says there's a lot of stopping. Zok the Beis Yosef, v'niro Davi Yosef saba the loik Rafuna b'rei Yeshua. That we have a machloikas. Rafuna holds that you could stop someone from opening up. You can't compete with anyone b'chlal. If a person's there, you can't open up. Rafuna b'rei Yeshua says there's no problem. Davi Yosef that says that you could stop the person from opening is going according to Rafuna, not according to Rafuna b'rei Yeshua. Memela zok the Beis Yosef, we don't kaim like this ladina. However, the Dr. Moshe argues. So the Daiti Nira, the Gam Rafuna b'rei Yeshua, even Rafuna b'rei Yeshua argues, who holds that you can stop someone from competing. Moide b'hai dina. He agrees to this din, to Rabbi Yosef's halacha. Why? Since you have to pass, in order to get deep into the mova, you're going to pass the first person, and you're going to stop. Now we actually had such a case, a very similar case. We had a case where a guy was selling a srogim, and he, comes close to Yantit. There's also a more out of town community people, so medactic, they have to get that, Chazanisha Esrog. So the guy rented space from the right next door. He rented space from the shul. Had there was the main shul, and they had like a small area across the parking lot. We were selling a srogim, and then put a big sign. He rented from the shul the space, and the guy went in the parking lot, opened up, he's selling a srogim.
Mamish next door.
Not next door, in the parking lot, which crossed Mamish's path. Mamish had this thing. The interesting part was, so the chayris be machloikas between the Beis Yosef and the Darkei Moshe. According to the Beis Yosef, this halacha, there's no reason to stop him, is because the only reason that Yosef stopped him was because he passed like a funa. And according to the Ramah, you could stop him based on this Avi Yosef. The interesting thing was in this case was that it was Sfardim, so not so simple because
Beis Yosef.
They held like the Beis Yosef. And they got to the whole machloikis. What happens if they come to you as a dayan who's Ashkenazi and he
it's not it's only in Archaim. It's only in Archaim, not in Chesh Mishpat.
Rav Nissi Krauts holds that it's only in Archaim. Rav Yosef holds not like that. Okay, that's a whole separate shmooze, not for now. But the Ma'aseh, here you have a machloikis between the Beis Yosef and the Darkei Moshe. If you open the competition in a way where you're sort of going to stop the competitor, he had already a business. He had a business there from before, and you will go ahead and opening up in a way where he has to cross your business, and it's a type of business that the person won't have an incentive to come to the end of the movie to do it, like a rechaim, which is probably the same exact product, and there's no difference that he should go. Why should he travel further to go ahead and do it? So according to the machloikas, the Beis Yosef holds that there's no way to stop him. The Darkei Moshe holds that you could stop him. They mentioned before it's not only a Darkei Moshe, which is not so posh, but the Ephraim brings that this is not really from the Agoy's Darkei Moshe. It was Eza Talmud Toya that put it in. It's not really belonging to the Darkei Moshe. But Shuvas Ramah, Yizachah says the same. So when discussing the halacha of the famous tshuva from the Ramah, when the Rampadava went and he was Magia to Rambam, and a person came ahead and a guy came and he wanted to
print another Rambam.
He printed another Rambam, selling it for cheaper. So the Ramah over there says
with that guy's Rambam.
But the Nakuda over there was he was going to sell it for a Zov cheaper. and he was selling it for cheaper. So no one had an incentive to go ahead and buy from Rampadava if you go to the guy and he's selling it for a zob cheaper, but the person was purposely undercutting the market. That over here you could stop him based on the concept of even though the halacha is like Rafuna paskin that Rafuna ready to be sure that you're allowed to go ahead and paskin. You're allowed to go ahead and compete with someone else. When you're allowed to go ahead and compete with someone else, afterwards it's not Bori Hazeka, but when it's Bori Hazeka, to go in Hocha, Gabi Movish, and Bevada Yazekwa. Over here, you're going to Bevada go ahead and be Mazakin. Kuli Amoida, the Huchas Rafuna. In Paskin like Rafuna Yeshua is Moida to Rafuna. The Mokum where it's Bori Hazeka. Over here, a case we're selling it for Zov less, that's a case of Bori Hazeka. Now, what's the makar of this Ramah? So the Marsham and Tikkun Olam brings us Chuvas Ramah, and he says, he's Svirle Kedas Rimagash. You mentioned the Rimagash. The Rimagash says that if you have a school of fish, and once the first school of fish gets caught, they disappear from the area. So the first guy who puts his net, I guess it'll be closer to where the school of fish are coming from, and he's going to catch the fish. The second guy who was there before, the fish are not going to continue to go ahead unto him. So Zok the Rimagash, that's a case of Shani Dog of the Yovsiyar. Zok the Marsham and Tikkun Olam, that the makor of the Chuvas Ramo and the Darkei Moshe is from this Rimagash. According to we passed in like the Gemara's matcha that there's no raya from the Brisa because Shani Dog of the Yovsiyar. So here we have to go with the teretz of the Brisa. Now it's not so posh that we actually go with that. There's a Meiri, a Machzedek to say that even once the Gemara passed like Rabbi Yeshua, we don't have to come on to the Dichei the Gemara. But Lamaisa, the Marsham, some Sefer, they all go with the teretz of Shani Dogim the Siyara. And Mikla and Shani Dogim Siyara, when he comes to the possible use of the Gamri, we're taking away all the business from him, then you have a right to go ahead and to stop him.
Even though Ramah doesn't mention not to Rimagash and not to be Yosef, it's a little fair, no?
Correct. I mean, but that's why you have the Marsham that learns that's the Makar from the Marsham that tells you that the Makar of the Ramah was from this. You could say the Marsham, and I'll tag it in a minute. I'll show you there's two other Makars that I'm not saying it has to be like that. The Marsham learns that the Makar is the Rimagash and Dogim the Siyara. The Chaim Sofer is bothered that if you look in the Rambam, if you look in the Rif, they don't bring Shani Dogim the Siyara. If this is Kaim La'alocha and this is a Makar of Alocha, so how could we? It's not. Why is it not brought down the Rif? Why did the Rambam bring it down? So that's there's two more Makaras that you have for the Chuvas Ramah. There's a Chuvah Avnei Nezer. It's also a very interesting case. There was a person who had a store. And besides the fact that he had a store, he was also in charge of giving out the licenses. Seems like they're collecting bullets after the army shot, whatever. He was in charge of giving out these licenses. And he told everyone that if you want to get a license, you have to shop by me. If you go shop at a competition, no more license fee. The shaila is, could he stop him or not? So if you hold it, there's no risk of competing. Okay, very good. So I have a store, you have a store. I have an advantage that I have this thing, so I'm using my advantage. What's wrong? What am I doing wrong? So one of the Bakaris that I answer him is this Chuvas Ramah, Shani Dogim the Siyara, that we have a Makar, that if you're going to knock me out completely, no one's going to come to my store anymore because they're all going to be scared. They're not going to get the license to collect it. So I'm going to lose my whole business. So this will be one Makar. So when he brings this Rimagash, he brings the Rimagash, and he says like this. He first brings Rimagash. He wants to say that there are other pshatim in the Rishonim. He says like this. He brings another Makar. The Gemara discusses if I'm allowed to give out a geizim kloyas, if I have a store. So in order to get the kids to come to me, so I'm going to give out a geizim. I'm going to give out nuts to the kids. So when the parents send out the kids to go shopping, they know that they're going to get nuts from me, so they're going to be attracted to come to me. So the Gemara brings them. There's a brisa that brings them a chloikus in this. Tanan, a Mishnah. Yehuda Omer, leichalek chem v'nikloyis v'agoyzim tinoikes. Nesh magil netzler. If Yehuda holds I can't do it because you're going to attract them to come to you and they're not going to go to competition. V'cham matir, v'cham matir. And the Gemara says, wonder why the cham matir. The Gemara gives a reason that anok the amalei anok kamaflagina amagoyzi at plus shiuski. I'm giving out nuts, you give out almonds. What's the problem? I'm not doing anything wrong. And the Rif and the Rambam both bring them this time. Correct? Avnei Nezer, I have to say any reason. I have a store. I want to attract the customers to come to me. So I'm giving out nuts. We pass like a fundamental of Yeshua. There's nothing wrong with competing with someone who's an existing store, and I want to compete with him. I'm allowed to go and compete with him. So I'm giving out nuts. So I'm going to attract them to me. So very good. So I'm doing a good job. What's wrong? Because you give shiuski, that's why it's mutter to do it. It's mutter because you pass like a funda bread of Yeshua. I'm allowed to compete with someone. There's nothing wrong with competing. Zok Avnei Nezer, that the only time I'm allowed to compete is only if the other person's on equal footing with me. Equal footing as me. He could do the same thing that I could do. I could give out a geizim, he could give out shiuski. If we're both unequal, but if you're using an advantage to compete in such a way where you're taking something away from me, and he's nichol on that, Davi Yosef. You are using an advantage. You're first in the Movid, and I'm deep in the Movid. So I'm already existing. I have an already existing store, and now you're going to come in the front, and no one's going to come to me. I can't compete with you. What am I going to do? My store's in the back. I don't have a store in front of your store, so I can't compete with you. So that would be something which potentially you're not allowed to do. Yeah, because I could come. Whatever you're doing in your store, I could do in my store. The halacha is whatever you're doing in your store, I could do in my store. That's not a problem. That's we're passing a hundred Yeshua. I'm allowed to go and compete. When am I allowed to not allowed to compete? When I'm doing something that you can't do. Another case we had like this was someone wanted to open in a basement a liquor store. I'm not going into whether it's right or wrong. He was opening without a license. So the other guy was saying, I spent how much money, I don't know, I forgot the exact number, was $1 million, whatever it was that it cost to buy a liquor license. And I have to pay up, I have to have a storefront, and it cost me a lot. Here, you sell it in your basement, you're selling it for cheap. You're selling it for much cheap. You're undercutting the market. Why are you undercutting the market? Because you're selling it without that. So you're using something which is not necessarily a firm practice. I held that you have to have a license. Well, if he's taking away from a liquor store completely, and he's knocking him out completely, and the person can't compete, again, when you sell 1 or 2 bottles in the shamas in the thing, and he doesn't have a thing, I'm not going into the right or wrong of selling
the mixer. They sell in the mixer.
That's not a thing. But the point is that no one's coming to buy it. He's not selling it cheaper. Usually, it's more expensive. It's a matter of convenience. He has a few bottles over there that he's selling. He's not shutting down the wine store. There's too many people in the wine store buying what for Shabbos what they're buying. So there, it's a matter of convenience. I take away a few bottles, but I'm not closing you down. The question was, we were saying that, you're opening up a significant store where there was no room for that, and you're using to your advantage something which I can't compete with. There you have a shaila of according to the Avnei Nezer, which Nishrash, the way he's learning the Ramah, that if you're using something that I can't necessarily do, then you have a shaila of this thing. Someone to show too, Google, Netscape, there was a whole famous lawsuit that on the browser, you put on my browser. So basically, you control the market, and you're going to knock me out completely, not let me on. That would be a shaila of this aviyot.
Yeah, but because American law has antitrust. Do we have officially antitrust in halacha?
We don't have antitrust. This is the shaila. The question of whether
this
we have
is as close. This is it.
The sugya. This is the sugya of trust. The Chaim will see argues. Yeah, no such thing as antitrust. Okay, they get together. You get together. You make a cartel, and you knock out the competition.
You're allowed to make cartels.
Look at the Chaim. But it's mishrash. The shaila is if we pass them like this teretz of Shani Dagam Diavsior and how to learn this thing is a shaila gufa. If halacha now we have to be the machusa, we have to deal with that. I'm not dealing with that now. But if you want to know a diktuk halacha, and when the Bechaim in Europe, they probably didn't have antitrust law. But you want to know if there's such a concept halachically, whether or not there's an antitrust law. That is exactly what the sugya is. The third shot in the Ramah is the Chassam Sofer brings that Rashi says after he brings Yov Chiyura, where you recognize the thing, Rashi ends off, Misha whoever's going to come to you will buy, and whoever's going to come to me will buy. Chassam Sofer also sees a makar in Rashi, that the nakuda is whether or not there's a teretz at the end to say whoever's going to come to you will come to you, and whoever's going to come to me will come to me. We'll get back to this Chassam Sofer in a minute. So far we have that there's the first teretz in the Gemara. We have a Tshuvas Ramah and a Darki Moshe, according to the way we have it in front of us. If it's not a Talmud that put it in, that says that when you want to compete with someone in a situation where you're taking away his whole business, it's also to go ahead and to do it based on one of these 3 makaros. Now, what's called you're taking away a person's business completely? What's the Hagdor? What does it mean you're taking away someone's business? We used to have Pasuk Yisrael. We have the case of Davi Yosef. We have the case of the Tshuvas Ramah. How do you practically apply it? So there's a machlokes between Rav Moshe and the Chassam Sofer. The very interesting tshuva for Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe has a shaila. Over there, there was a.
Can you give us the site?
Was a rebel.
Can you give us the site? The site.
It's Chesed Mishpat. I forgot which.
Okay, I'll find it.
It's Chesed Mishpat Aleph. I forgot the. So he said like this. There was someone who had it seems like it was a shtibel, some rebbe over there who had a shtibel. And part of people daven the different nusach. It seemed like daven nusach Ashkenaz, he daven nusach Sfard, and they weren't so freedom with his nusach that he did. Shenignem benusach or benigun tefillah was different that they were used to, and it said there was mavalbel them. Also, he used to scream at them. He used to call them. He screamed once, and the Rebbe said he didn't do it so often. He called them communists. He called them. Seems like it was a Labadik place a little. And the people decided that they had enough. It said one of them said that they made fun of my Rebbe. They had enough. They wanted to open up another shul. So Moshe said they can't open up another shul. Hanachal is daiti. They don't have a rishus to open up. But since he was already there before, and his parnasa came from the shul, and you're trying to take away the parnasa, and it's very interesting in this tshuva of Moshe. So the part of it they want to say that we're not doing it for parnasa. We don't care. We're not doing it for parnasa. We want to push it a place to daven. We're not doing it for the.
It's Aleph Lamed Ches. Sorry.
We're doing it because we enjoy the.
Want to daven better.
The Moshe says that if you're not doing parnasa, it's actually worse. Hear what Moshe says. Since it's not Laravacha, because what's the het of competing? You do b'say shalcha, and I'll do b'say shali. You have a right to open a business. I also have a right to open a business. Dr. Moshe, I have a right to open a business if I'm doing it l'shem business. If I'm stamazay doing it because I want to do tefillah and he's doing it for a business, you have no right to shut down someone's business just because you want for such a motive. Only if you want to have another business, you have a right. But the Ma'aser Moshe in the tshuva, the bottom line says that you can't open, and he says because he brings the tshuva Chassam Sofer, which paskins like the Ramah. And the Mela, he says, it's brought down the Piskei Tshuva, and he asks him from going ahead, the people from going ahead and opening up the second shul.
Which comes out the paradox that Ruchnius is more, you can do something Ruchnius less than you can do.
Maybe he the one to begin the Ruchnius. I'll get used to the Nusach and they could get over it. But the bottom, let me just go because I want to get so like this. So Ramosha says like this. What's called Pasuk Yisrael Gamri? So he says, what was it called? The person had a shul and he was living off the panos from the shul. So it's mashmat telling that person where there's enough to live off or not. Upasha shekadei chayiv mikri kederech hahoitzim anoshim beinim medragosai. V'cheinu b'isla yordam s'chaver shemamayit zeshlo yichyeloi k'dei hatza'osav. After dying yishlim mezoynes mitzimtzama. If the guy's going to have what to live off mitzimtzum, but he's not going to be able to live according to that person's stature, that's pasuk for yisla gamri. So you're allowed to take away. You're allowed to open up another shul. When you're not allowed to open up another shul, if you're going to open up a shul in a way which can take away so many mispalim that the first Rebbe won't have enough parnasa from his shul. What's called enough parnasa? So enough parnasa is that he should have what to live off of a person in his stature and in his position in life. The Chassam Sofer says a different Hagdara. The Chassam Sofer, Chashemishpat Simen Kuf Yod Ches, says like this, Poshet. Afilu yesh le'oidum nesacheres. Not totally if he's a business, if you know he's not going to have enough to live off from this business or not. If he has a different business where he's a oisher from, I feel oisher gadol. Want to compete with someone? If the other case was he was giving a hechsher for sugar for Pesach, and the person could have been an oisher, the mashgiach could have been an oisher, and you want to take away, you're competing with them to take away that business. We look at the business that you're doing. If this business is going to have to shut down completely, that's called pasuk yisla gamri. So we don't look at the affluency of the person who's living off that business. We look at the business itself, whether or not it's going to be viable or not. According to Chassam Sofer, you could be an oisher muflig, but you have this small little business, and you want to live off, and now you want to live off that business, but you want to make money off this business as well. And someone else wants to come and open up in such a way which you're going to have to shut down completely. Then we have a pasuk yisla gamri. So we have a Moshe says it's totally in the owner of the store, whether or not it's pasuk yisla, whether or not it's to live off the money that he has. And according to some Sofer, it's totally whether or not this business is going to be able to stay viable or not. I saw in the Erech Shai and also said this Hagdara that it's totally whether or not this business is going to be profitable or not. If the business is still profitable and you have a right to go ahead and to compete with them, he's not saying it mamash in the Chassam Sofer, but I think that's what comes down to Chassam Sofer. So pasuk yisla legamri is totally in whether or not this business is viable or not. So there, so far, what we have a machlokas of Huna and a Huna Rebbe Yeshua, whether you're allowed to compete. You have a locha with pasuk of Huna Rebbe Yeshua that you're allowed to go ahead and compete. When it's pasuk yisla legamri, we have all these. We have Moshe, Chassam Sofer, Tshuvas Haramah. Dr. Moshe says you're not allowed to compete when it's pasuk yisla legamri. Connected these poskim.
And we have the three definitions of what legamri means.
Correct.
You're not finished. Okay.
Try to fit it. Now, the Beis Ephraim says like this. Beis Ephraim says, argues on this halacha of the Ramah completely. He says even though it's a chuvas Ramah, Lamaisa, it's not the chuvas Ramah is not brought down. In Shulchan Aruch, he doesn't bring it down, and he says that he learns that the Eza Talmud Toya was Magia to put it into the Darkei Moshe, but this Darkei Moshe doesn't exist. And the Beis Ephraim Paskin, there's nothing wrong. Even Pasuk Yisrael Gamra, you have a heter to go ahead and do it. The Divrei Chaim in Choshen Mishpat, Chelek Aleph Siman Chof, also he brings the Machlokas Rishonim. And somehow the Shoel over there says that, it was near Divrei Av Yosef. You like the Divrei Av Yosef, the Rimagash is Pshat in the Gemara. So maybe he wanted to paskin that Pasuk Yisrael Gamra is also. He says, where do we have a right to decide between the Rishonim, that you have a right to decide which Pshat? This is not the way we go. Lamais, it's not put down Shulchan Aruch, it's not the Divrei Chaim, it's not put down the Shitas of the Ramah, the Shitas of the Rimagash, of Yosef is not put down Shulchan Aruch. Veils like the Divrei Chaim, we don't paskin like that. He says, and Kapanim, he brings a Machloikas, he brings Mas Binyam and Sheris Yosef, he brings a bunch of Makaris both ways, and he feels like Kapanim Sveik of Edi Yochel Limchos Biyad, the people who are opening up. So you have a Shuvas Beis Ephraim, which says you have a lot of Pasuk Yisrael Gamri. You have a Divrei Chaim that says since it's Sveik of the Dino, you can't be Pasuk Yisrael Gamri. They can't stop him. And the Divrei Chaim feels always that Avada, Kafir Reis Ein Yadaya, and Avada it's Kedai to make Takonas, but Meikah the Dino, you can't stop him. So a matter of practice, to how to fear the sois lamaisa is very difficult. Because what's called pasuk yisrael gamri? Very often, the second guy who's opening up, he's not a shaitan. He's opening up. Why does he think he's going to get all the business? So there's one store, we had it in Torah, where there's one restaurant. Another guy comes and opens up. Why does he think he's going to get all the business? Elamai, he believes that there's enough there, or he believes that the guy's not selling a good product and the products can be changed. We had one case where a guy. He made Kaddishim. You called him up and he ordered everything for a Kiddush. And another guy wanted to open up the same type of business. You call me up and I prepare everything, come deliver it to a Kiddush. The first guy was trying to stop him. Pasuk Yisrael, how many people, there's not enough of the business that it's going to be viable for both of them. So we were still in the discussion. Yeah, he's open for 2 hours a day, Ben Darim, and he's living off that. It's Gavaldik, Ben Darim, he's in yeshiva. And the other guy said, I'm going to be open the whole day, so I'm going to get all the business. So is that Pasuk Yisrael Gamri? You want to have a store, you want to open up for 2 hours a day, and you want to stop, but really there's enough room for both. So practically, when it comes down to it, it's not so often where you have a case, and it's going to be a judgment call, is it possible use of gamma? This guy had a restaurant, and he was a little outdated. He didn't bring in all the new foods and all the new things. The other guy was going to come and open up and bring new foods. So you also go ahead and bring new foods. That's called possible use of gamma. Update your menu, and next day there's not enough room. If you're going to say there's not enough people in the vicinity and it's not going to work, that's one thing. But if the reason why people aren't coming is because they're going out of town, they're going to other places to buy food because your menu is not so good, then you also can't panic a pasuk yisrael gamri. But l'maisa we have a machloikas of pasuk yisrael gamri or not, and a matter of practice, it's not so simple exactly how we're going to work it or not.
What happens if a guy has a store and he's selling widgets, the only one selling widgets, and a guy opens up the internet, the case you mentioned before?
Yeah.
Is there such a mitzvah? Can you have possible have a time on that? The internet doesn't exist in real life.
So when we're dealing by most of the Achriti, that could be effective. But when we're not dealing by most of the Achriti, it's effective. Is it possible to use the gamri or not? Are you stopping him or not? If by you opening up a website, I had that also. A guy used to deliver diapers. So he had a store, deliver it. And a guy opened up an internet selling it very, very cheap and delivered it all over town. So you can make a person go out of business.
But he opened it up in the Masachrit?
No problem.
It's adopted where?
There's most of the Masakriti that were Hura Vishu is moided at the.
I said so. New York, in New York, the guns in there.
You have to know. So don't deliver to like. When you're taking someone's existing business, and there's not enough room for you to start making deliveries in this place, and you're going to take away enough business from him, according to the Ramah, you have to know that there's a concept of Yisrael Gamri. Again, it's a massive machloek. I'm not saying that necessarily do. But when it comes to practical, Bezdin usually makes a pshara, they work it out, they try to get that case with the restaurant. So he sold certain things and he sold certain things. They usually work it out that it should be enough that both businesses should be viable. But if you want to know a predictive halacha, this is the shayla, the machloekas hapaiskin, as to whether or not you could stop someone in an oifen ways from opening up. There is a concept of stopping someone. He's going to stop someone completely from opening up. Okay, that's the one shot, and this is the first shot. Sorry, let's go quickly. I know we only have 8 minutes left. Go through the other shot quickly. Rashi, we mentioned earlier. Rashi says, "What's Shani Dogam Diov Silara?" That there was hookah chura. You knew where his hole was, and you placed the net there, and it was betuach that it was going to come to this person's net. Zoktach Sam Sefer, according to Rashi, Buhardin and Kvaria Koinen Bechanusay, the Gomer HaPisuk V'Leichosaklom. It's Chashemish B'Tzimenayin Tes. the Masla Tanai, the some Sefer said that according to Rashi, if someone's already in a store and you go and try to pull him out, that would be awesome. Remember once there was a guy came, a friend of mine told me, he was sitting in the store, he went to groceries, making Shalom Zocher at night, and the guy came over to him, he had a candy store in town, and he wanted, they were both rather also learning Chashim Mishpaden, and he wanted to know, would it be mutter for me to tell you that I sell these same candies for much cheaper? And the answer is, according to Sefer, no, it'll be awesome. Because the person was already waiting online, he had already his wagon full of these candies.
And what if it was in the parking lot?
The parking. We'll get to the second in the parking lot. It wasn't in the parking. The Shulchan in Siman Reish Chav Ches Sukkot Nidal also says, "Machanusay shel acher ein likris shum kaina v'oiv v'loisasek gvul." Loisasek gvul to call someone out of a store. He's asking what's the difference.
It's the deraisa.
What?
It's the deraisa.
That's already some safe. It's a big machlokes if it's what the issa of asagas gvul is if it's the deraisa or not.
Is that even if it's cheaper because you're helping out the customer?
Correct. But when I say he's already nitzah, he's already trapped by that person. You're not allowed to get involved. Even if you do it, the pashtus there's no het there of asagas gvul or tevis alokim. We'll see that by most achriti there's a het of tevis alokim pashtus. But this halacha there's no het of tevis alokim. Rav Bloy in a tshuva wants to discusses the case we mentioned earlier. The chappers they come along the route. So he wants to say it's a problem. They're sitting and waiting by the bus stop, and you're coming and taking them away. So maybe the bus stop is like the chanos. Then he says maybe it's not mamash like the chanos because they're doing it only for their own TLS, but it's not mamash like a store. A store there was a massive matin between the customer and the buyer. You go into a furniture store for Marshall, and they're about to sell you something, and someone swoops in. That's for sure. The has a son of Rashi is already nitzah. The guy Stam stood over there because he knows it's going to come. Maybe it's not mamash the madrega of Rashi. So I saw a tshuva from Ephraim Grimlat. He brings a story from Moshe. Let's go answer your question if it's mamash in the store or not. He says that there was two people came. Moshe was sitting next to Moshe. At one time, two people came with the following story for Moshe the Paskin. It was Matzah Pesach. You do from the big mitzvahs, you have to get chametz on Matzah Pesach. Some of them
Pizza.
you have to buy pizza. Then it was a bakery. It was already a little. What year was it? It was Tafshin Yud Bey. It was probably pre that you had to get the Chaypul Yava mitzvahs Hasei to get pizza. It was a bakery. And there were two bakeries on the same block. And one of them was full. And one of them was empty. So the guy who was in an empty store went out and called, by the way, come to me, I'm empty. I took away customers that were online in the store. The Rav Moshe asked him, was the guy online or not? Was the guy in the store or not? So he said, no, I was medactic. I only took people who were online, but they were outside the store. So Rav Moshe told him,
Mutter.
He did say that maybe it was this Chasidus not to, but Rav Moshe said it was mutter. And he told Rav Moshe told them over there that they shouldn't fight, they should be b'shalom. They walked away, b'simcha. You have to be Rav Moshe to be able to get that away. We're not so fortunate usually when people come fighting that you can just tell them they should be b'simcha, the makab. So Ephraim Grimberg says, he sees from here that there's a chiluk between in the store and out of the store. And he brings also a similar thing from Rabbi Yo Ram. He says, I don't know who he is, but he said he was on Pesach's Bezdin. He said the same exactly so in the gate of bus stops, that if it's totally if whether or not you were mamish in the bus stop, if you're under the roof of the bus stop, then there's a problem, according to Rashi, because I schlepped you away from an existing thing. Now, what's the Havana on that? Lania's daita, you could say the Havana is the Machlokes of Rashi and the Ramban. Rashi says that any time it was Betuach was going to come to me, there's already an issa. If Betuach is going to come to me because I have a small store and is waiting online, what's the difference if it was in there or not? According to the Ramban, the Imam had to be in the net, and you pulled me out of the net. I heard the Mokum to say that there's a mile of being in the net. Again, use a lotion of gezel. But it could be that the Ramban is understanding that it's more betuach because you already had you already in my store. The fish was already in the net. Could be that, or it could be something there. Moshe was saying a svara. When a person is outside the store, is more likely to leave, and a person is inside the store not. But in the gate is Shiloh. Moshe seemed to say again. I can't say if I understand it fully, but there's a chiluk. This in order to be over this halacha of the Chassam Sofer that according to Rashi. That there's an issa to grab someone to compete with someone. Once the person's already in the person's store, it has to be physically in the store. The person's already waiting outside line, maybe you won't have that. Let's go to another reason to aser. Even if you hold that this reason is not enough to aser those chappers to come because they're waiting outside. They're not under any roof. They're not kaina to it's not bituach in an oifen where it's mamash in the chanos. There's another reason to aser, which is Rabbeinu Meir. I mentioned before another pshat in the Gemara. Was Rabbeinu Meir that said that if they baited the area, and that's the reason why they came there, it's also to use what Yana built, or Yana brought, what Yana did. So I'm using Yana's work for my own advantage. According to Rabbeinu Meir, according to this case, why is these chappers have the opportunity to go and drive around and get the people? Because he knows anyone's waiting by this stop is waiting for a bus. They're waiting by the bus to Yerushalayim, so they're there. So they come by that bus stop. So you're using Yena's investment.
Bus stop is bus
Yena's
stop.
bus stop. The bus stop is the bait. The bus stop is similar to the bait. Same way as a concept that I baited you. So B'tzik Zilbashan has a tshuva and he wants to answer it based on this. Because the same way if I bait the fish to come to this area and now someone else wants to come and take those fish away, there's an issur of to take away, to compete in such a way we're using my work. The same thing will be over here. They spend money, they built over time, they send buses, they sometimes send buses when they're losing money. But they built the route, they spent money on this route. And you're going and swooping and using my route, so that l'chayra would be also according to Rabbeinu Meir. The same thing we mentioned, the case of the cash for gold. According to Rabbeinu Meir, that was a chabiyasa. I baited the area. The reason why the people came to this area was that they came looking for the cash for gold on this and this street. They knew that this is and it's probably a reputable company because they spend money. You see it on the radio, you hear it on the radio, you see it on an advertisement. It's something that you feel comfortable that the store is not just a fly-by-night store is going to rip you off. So the reason why they came to the street was because they were looking for that person. And then I go ahead and swoop and take it away. It would also be
Yeah, but it's not chiyus legamra.
Doesn't need to be chiyus legamra.
Why?
The according to Rabbeinu Meir is a different pshat in the Gemara. According to Rabbeinu Meir, according to the Ramban, the Rimagash's pshat, you need pasuk chiyus legamri. According to Rabbeinu Meir, it's nothing to do chiyus legamri. It's because you're using my bait.
Stealing my bait. You're stealing my bait.
Stealing. I put down fish, and you're using my work for yourself. You're not allowed to go ahead and to use my work in order to go ahead and to use for yourself.
You don't even need Barizeko. All you need is this. You're taking my bait away.
That you're using what I planned before. You're going ahead and using it for using my work in order to get for you to go ahead and get the custom. Okay, when I finish, just go over the shitas. So the etzem we have a machlokes in the Gemara whether or not you're allowed to go ahead and compete.
And sorry, that's you say for software, right? That's
the same. You say for software. The same thing would be that. Again, you can make an argument. I did a toyas. I didn't mamash use your name, but the pashas is that you created a name. You created a name. The name exists because I spent money to go ahead and build up this brand name, and you're using my brand name to go and do it. I didn't mamash use your brand name. I did it as a toyas. So in that case, it could possibly be mechal. Because the case of Rabbeinu Meir is the fish came to this area mamash because of over here. Over here, I created a name, and I rather chap tusim. I have people who are not coming. They wanted to come to you, but the said they did it. So I chap the toyas. I didn't use your work. I didn't mamash use your work. You thought it's possible to be mechal.
Why did the Ramah use the Rabbeinu Meir?
Why? Because why did he use it?
He took my book away.
Well, because he took away the reason why they're buying is because of the hagot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't pass by. Some sefer in the different chuvas uses that in passing. All these are sveikas. That's the problem with this. You have 4 different shitas, and each one's totally in the same Gemara. So some of them you could say that some sefer uses Rashi and uses that and he uses both because they're masking each other. But each one of them are totally in a machlok. It's not saying double pasha because you have a Rabbeinu Meir that it's double pasha that we pass like. It's not the sibit shechanah. You can point to and say this is also. I'm just showing you that according to this rishon, you have this problem. So the Bible we have 3 terutzim in the Gemara Shan Dogim Diyav Siara. We have first we have the machlokes of Huna and Huna Breder Yeshua. We pass on Huna Breder Yeshua. If someone wants to compete with someone else, it's mutter to go ahead and to compete with someone else. There's no risk. Whether or not there's a midas chasidus not to go ahead and to compete, we have a machlokes and how to learn the Gemara and Marcus. The Shuvas Chavis Yor says mutter chatchila to open up. It's prushim and there's a midas not to. The Shulchan Aruch HaRav seems to go up a level and says the midas chasidus not to go ahead and compete. The Chassam Sofer, Stephen the Chassam Sofer, but the Chassam Sofer upon him in one tshuva argues and says that the Gemara is referring to cases where it's the dina and it's mashma. There's no even midas chasidus not to go ahead and to compete. So the Chassam Sofer does say there are areas where you're not allowed to go ahead and compete, and all of these are takatolim and machlokas. One of them was when it's kapasach chiyus legamri, we can shut down the person who was there before completely. But there you have a tremendous machlokas mavuka in the poskim. You have the Darkei Moshe, Chuvas Haramah, the Moshe, the Chassam Sofer, all paskin. You could stop someone. Keneged, you have the Beis Ephraim, you have the Divrei Chaim, and many other poskim that say that you can't stop them. Then you have also the concept of the Chassam Sofer that if you're mamish taking away from mamish out of someone's store, there would be an isser. And Rabbeinu Meir, when I'm using it, there's different areas where you could stop someone from competing. There's 2 more areas which we didn't get to, which I'm sure we'll get to the next year, which is Marufia, who was a steady customer, and out of town competition as well. Someone coming from out of town to try to get customers.